lost that game for him. I'm convinced that he would have stroked out in real time and it would have happened on the Jumbotron because he spent the entirety of the day on the Jumbotron rooting on the Jets defense, who stayed in the Titans backfield on third down. 7 sacks of Ryan Tannehill. A team that allowed or that was scoring an average of 6 points per game through 3 games in the NFL put 27 up on the Titans. It did take overtime, but they did it. 27 points on the Tennessee Titans yesterday. Zach Wilson found his stride. Corey Davis got his revenge. Everything is everything. I mean, it's the first time they had New York Sports Talk Radio on in the elevator coming down from the press box to the bowels of MetLife where we were headed to the postgame press conference. And it is the first time that I have heard legitimate joy on New York Sports Talk Radio. Famously miserable about the New York Jets specifically. And they can still have their misery over the Giants. But today, the fans in the streets of Manhattan, of Times Square, of East Rutherford, New Jersey, they are celebrating because they took down a Tennessee Titans team that was just not good enough. Not even close. Not even close. And it happened in a variety of different ways. There are so many different things that trouble you about this particular loss. Now, listen, we're doing, I don't want to call it doomsday radio, but this is not, this is not great. It's like Mad Men. Not great, Bob. It's not good. What happened yesterday was, it's a 3-point loss, so you can't say that they were outright pitiful, but for all of the things that happened across the board, it made it feel a hell of a lot worse than the scoreboard did indicate. In fact, and frankly, for everybody who called this show or tweeted me a week ago and who had something to say about the idea that, they can take it easy against the Jets and the Jags. Week 4 and week 5, man, this team is cruising. Get ready for Buffalo on Monday Night Football. Get ready for the Kansas City Chiefs on a short week that following Sunday. They got this. Man, in what world? If you're somebody who legitimately believes in the idea of a trap game after years and years of watching NFL football, frankly, I question your judgment as a sports fan because trap games don't exist. Teams lose to teams that are better than them. Somebody make the case to me today. I'm begging you. I dare you. Make the case to me today that the New York Jets weren't better than the Tennessee Titans for 60 minutes of football. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved. We're going to talk a lot about this game. You're going to hear from Mike Vrabel last night. You're going to hear from Ryan Tannehill. And you're going to hear from David Long, one quote specifically that I didn't think was going to enrage people the way that it did, but I understand it after I went back and looked at the transcripts in retrospect from what the Titans, I guess he's a starting inside linebacker. He's been starting every week to this point. What the Titans starting inside linebacker had to say about what the Jets were showing them on offense that allowed a team that couldn't score until yesterday to find the end zone, especially late with frequency. Here's the thing. The biggest issue, and there are many issues across the board. This is an onion. We're going to peel it back layer by layer, piece by piece over the course of the next, 2 hours and 50 minutes and change. The biggest issue is you're trying to figure out who they are, what are they capable of? This is why I say, don't ask me for record predictions. Don't ask me for Super Bowl prognostications. Don't ask me about stuff that you have no idea how to evaluate. Give me 4 games of an NFL season, and then I'll start to tell you what I know about your team. Then you'll start to know, as fans, educated as all of you are about the team and the history of the team under Mike Vrabel, Mike Mularkey, Ken Wisenhunt, all the way back, Jeff Fisher, all of it, right? You guys are intelligent. You guys are smart. You guys are wise enough to know how to legitimately process what you're seeing in front of you. But it takes a little while. We're not going scorched earth today because this is week 1 and week 1 seems a little weird in the NFL across the board. No, we're going scorched earth today because this team I think we can start to tell some of the trends of what they are going to be and what they are capable of, and more importantly, what they're not capable of. And what the team I saw yesterday is not capable of is competing at a high level. What this team is capable of is losing to Jacksonville this coming week on the road. Urban Meyer videos be damned, and we'll talk about Urban at some point because he is not the Titans are not the only one who are getting the smoke today across the board. But in Nashville, that's what we're focusing on. And the Jags are the Titans' next opponent. And Lucas and I talked about it coming off of Thursday Night Football between the Jags and the Bengals. I said the Titans are totally capable of losing to that Jags team, completely and totally capable. Across the board, failures on every side of things. And it feels worse than Cincinnati in 2020. Markedly worse. The Titans were 5-1 going to Cincy last year. The Bengals had one win on their record. Joe Burrow was getting absolutely crucified behind a terrible offensive line. And that offensive line, when the Titans were facing them, had even less of their starters available than they ended up having throughout the course of the season. It feels worse than Cincinnati in 2020 by a mile, because the letdown losses, the playing down to this level of competition, it's a trend. And what Mike Vrabel said yesterday, because it almost sounded like from the media availability that we were trying to offer them the excuse from the way that collectively the questions were being asked. Basically, hey, how do you win a game if your roster outright sucks right now because you don't have guys? You don't have Julio Jones. You don't have A.J. Brown. You don't have Bud Dupree. You don't have Rashad Weaver. You barely, it seems, have your offensive line, and by the end of it, you barely had half of it. The amount of injuries that occurred throughout the course of yesterday, on top of who was already ruled out ahead of that game, it's not an excuse, nor will they accept it. In fact, we asked Mike Vrabel about this. We asked Mike Vrabel about this yesterday, and I want you to hear from the head coach. I don't know if it's going to make you feel any better. I don't know if it's going to comfort you in any way, shape, or form. But Lucas, if we can let the people hear from Mike Vrabel when he was talking about his concern of being this banged up through 4 weeks of NFL football and knowing that they have a hell of a lot longer to go and there's nothing but uncertainty ahead of them. Let's hear from the head coach last night at the podium after losing to the Jets.
I'm not concerned yet. We'll find somebody. We'll find 22 guys, 11 guys on offense and defense and special teams, and it's all part of it. It's all part of the job. But I'm not going to sit there and nobody's going to feel sorry for us. Nobody.
How much was health, Mike, do you think, a part of the protection issues too? Obviously, Ben goes down, comes back, Taylor comes back.
I mean, all these million excuses, they're all going to be valid. But we're not going to use them. We're going to have to understand that, how we have to try to play the game based on who's available and how they feel. And, they fight. I mean, guys are fighting, guys are going back in there. I appreciate that. It's just unfortunate that, we suffered some of those things.
It's Mike Vrabel speaking about yesterday's loss to the Jets. He's right. Nobody's going to feel bad for them today. Nobody. It is. And listen, I think there's plenty of injury excuses that are valid. Plenty of them. Find me a position, and we'll talk about this over the course of the show. Find me a position outside of quarterback and running back that the Titans were better than the Jets yesterday. The winless New York Jets. The Jets that I heard all week, the Titans, they don't need to sweat it. They got it. Hell, Diana Rossini was on the sidelines yesterday, not working. She was just there hanging out because she's a Jersey girl. She went to the Jets game with some of her family. It was nice to see her. She's been on maternity leave because she just had a kid, and she just happened to be on the sideline. Didn't know she was going to be there, so I was talking to her about the game and the season and all that. And I just kind of said, man, that everything in the world tells me that they're going to lose to the New York Jets today. And she looked at me like I was an idiot. I said, no, you don't understand. This is the most Titans. I don't do predictions. But if you had to pick for me a game on this schedule that they would blow, today would be the day. And sure enough, they took it to overtime. And to their credit, they did fight. Nobody should have criticism for Derrick Henry today. Nobody should have criticism for Ryan Tannehill today. You can work with the parts that you have, and those two tried to do the most with a collection of guys around them. That wasn't good enough, not by any stretch of the imagination. There are plenty of excuses today, but none of them are going to matter. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved. We'll open up the phone lines. Lucas is locked and loaded. He's hunched over like the Popeyes kitchen worker when the Popeyes chicken sandwich come out, just like the meme. Nobody cares, buddy. We're working today. How you feeling?
I'm alive.
Okay. It's more than we could say about the football team or their fans. We'll do that coming up next. And I'll tell you what my biggest concern from yesterday's game was moving forward. I'm Buck Reising, live from New York, and this is 104.5 The Zone.
J. Martin Ramon, you're part of the fam just for listening.
You guys are awesome. This is probably one of the best radio shows I've ever listened to.
J. Martin Ramon, tomorrow morning starting at 6 on 104.5 The Zone.
My good friend Gary football team. Buck Reising here with you until 1 o'clock, taking your calls, 615-737-1045. The only good thing about a Titans loss is what the callers sound like on Monday morning. So why don't we go full Feinbaum, and then I'll tell you exactly what my biggest concern, now all the things that went wrong, and I'll go through the litany of them, what my biggest concern moving forward is for these 2021 Tennessee Titans. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved. Your questions, your comments, your concerns. What one question would you ask Mike Vrabel today? Is something we put on a poll on Twitter. I'm looking forward to see the result. Hell, Lucas, we may do that poll early because I know the people are angsty on this Monday. Let's start with Kenston in Memphis, who wants to talk about the defense. What's up, Kenston?
What's up, Buck? I'm calling in to talk about this defense, man, but you know, the Jets had no business getting close to 27. It should have been around 17. But I don't really blame the offense because, like you said, the shortcomings, they did the best they could. But you know where I'm coming at. I said last week, you said I was box score scouting in inlet form. Where is Jeffrey Simmons, man? Like, this dude is invisible out there. Like, the guy that people keep telling me is supposed to be the best player on the defense. He's on all these top 10 lists. He's supposed to be this all-pro guy. He's over here getting blocked up by a rookie in Elijah Vera Tucker. Everybody else on that D-line, they say their names multiple times a game. Harold Landry, Nico Archie, T.R. Tart playing well. And don't tell me because Jeffrey Simmons gets double-teamed, because what great defensive lineman doesn't get double-teamed. Like, the guy is out there taking up a jersey, and it's disappointing because we've been told since he's got drafted that he's going to be the next great thing. So I expected him to have a bigger impact on the game to help out. But, I mean, for a guy, like I said, that's supposed to be a captain on defense, they're supposed to be the best player on defense, he's invisible for the last two games. Thanks, Bub.
Thanks for the call, Kenston. Hey, Lucas, do we have an opposite of a sound to rack people? Yeah, because Kenston tweeted me, Rex Road, Tehran that last night. We're also in the press conference. And I listen, okay. Of all the things, this is like the one guy, because there was only one of them. This is like the one guy that tried to pin that entire loss on Randy Bullock missing from 49 in overtime yesterday that would have allowed the Titans to play for a tie. And honestly, a tie has never looked so good for an NFL team. Kenston, man. You're hearing the guys' names around Jeffrey Simmons so often because he is allowing those guys from the attention that he attracts to create for other dudes. Danico Autry, of all of the things that the Titans look like they may have not done correctly this offseason, Danico Autry was an absolute badass yesterday, making plays all over the field, critical stops to help that defense get off the field. Harold Landry is playing the best football that I have seen from him through 4 games as an NFL pro. He's been spectacular. You didn't hear Ola's name a ton yesterday. He didn't have quite the success that they have had scheming up pressures for him. The other guys are allowed to eat because Jeffrey Simmons is the focal point of the defense. And if you are telling me that Jeffrey Simmons is not making plays as a run-stopping defensive tackle, if you want him to get 10 sacks or 15 sacks as an interior defensive lineman, you're just not looking at the position correctly. But for the first call today to be about Jeffrey Simmons, Kenston, I love you, baby, but that is asinine, up and down. That's the dumbest thing. Wait, it's not even just the dumbest thing in sports this week. It's the dumbest thing anybody said to me about Titans football outside of that one dummy. And I almost said a word that I didn't, and I can't do that to Lucas today because he's already sweating it on the phone lines. It's the dumbest thing anybody said to me outside of Randy Bullock lost that game for the Titans yesterday just because he happened to be the poor sap at the end that all the pressure was on.
We've also, first tweet of the day has come from Gary Todd, a loyal listener who we appreciate very much, but saying we must talk about the officiating yesterday. Ferkser was held, a runner was called down short of a first down. That is not something we're going to discuss today.
I'm not talking about the refs today. I mean, get over it. Get over it. It's just, of all the things today, there are many things that are going to be discussed. None of them are going to be the officiating. Play better. Don't get beat by an 0-3 Jets team. And by the way, if you thought that Jets team was 0-3 because they had a crappy defense, you haven't been watching the Jets, and that's fine. It's not your job to advance scout the Titans' opponent. If you would like to make comments and be informed, then maybe you should probably watch the opponent of that upcoming week before you make these grand assessments. But I had people contacting me on Twitter and Instagram and everywhere else yesterday saying, I can't believe we haven't scored more on the Jets. No, No, the Jets don't suck because their defense is spectacular. Look at the 3 drives that ended in 9 points that should have been 21. Now, all 3 drives in the first half ended that way for different reasons that they had to settle for Fat Randy field goals. But for the Tennessee Titans, the issue was going to be that defense first and foremost. And that defense sure gave them all kinds of hell yesterday across the board. It's not the only thing where they failed. I mean, listen to this litany of issues that they had. You had penalties. You had drop passes. You had bad snaps after Ben Jones went out. Aaron Brewer sends it skyrocketing over Ryan Tannehill's head on a third and 1. And whatever reason, Derrick Henry is not in the game now. We saw him ask out, so that's not a coaching decision. That was a Derrick decision. But they put McNichols in there in the shotgun, and then the snap goes flying over Ryan Tannehill's head. You had another rash of injuries. The protection was terrible. The receivers couldn't get separation. Bad play calls. A shanked punt, a 12-yard punt from a guy who doesn't drive for FedEx, UPS, or any delivery service in between. Blown coverages. The red zone offense couldn't get it done. Errant throws and a missed field goal to top it all off. It was a failure across the board. Now, if you want to look for any light at the end of the tunnel, they did all of that and only lost by 3 and took it to overtime. It doesn't matter. They still lost. 615-737-1045 is the number. Let's go to Kendall in Nashville, who wants to weigh in this morning. How we doing, Kendall?
Buck, first-time caller. Here's the. I'm not going to go full Feinbaum. I'm going to go full throttle on the Titans this morning. We probably need to go nuclear on the defense. I mean, here's the thing I don't understand: how a team can have so many injuries so early in the season. It's like I look at Derrick Henry, who trains like a madman every summer, and dude hardly ever gets injured. So I wonder why more people aren't, kind of tightening up on the strength and conditioning. I don't understand how many injuries. I mean, it's just ridiculous how many injuries we have already, and it's only 4 games into the year. So that's a big problem I have. But another problem is with Bunny Rabbit. Bunny Rabbit cheats. He gets 10 yards. How old is Bunny Rabbit? Like 31, 32, 33 years old? Dude is too old.
He's 32.
He's cheating.
He's 32.
Yeah, I mean, he's too slow. We need to get somebody back there that can cover these receivers who suck, by the way. They're not even that good. They're not even that good a receiver. So, but the main thing I think is strength and conditioning. Maybe we need to take Derrick Henry's lead and realize we need to get busy during the off season so we won't have so many injuries. And that's all I got to say, man. I appreciate it, brother. Thanks.
Hey, Kendall, thanks for the call. So here's what I'll say. Like I don't know enough about each individual's strength and conditioning program during the offseason. And it would be disingenuous for me to criticize, Frank Perrano and Todd Torricelli without knowing exactly all the ins and outs of how they manage these guys from a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, their rehab, their recovery. I don't think anybody has the proper answer to that question. With football, Vrabel talks about it all the time. It's 100% chance of injury. And take this into account, okay? Injury is as much luck as anything, and everybody's bodies handle the strain and the sport so much differently. Derrick Henry is different because it doesn't. Derrick Henry is one of one in that regard. Derrick Henry, and I'm certain that Derrick Henry has had issues that he just doesn't show because he's a bit of a cyborg in that regard. But to go through and we can ask about the strength and conditioning program. I don't know how much Vrabel is going to be willing to give us on that subject, but he will speak to the media at noon Central Time, and we will carry a portion of that press conference because I know the fans want to hear or want answers from him today and want to hear the kind of questions that he's being asked. In the case of Jackrabbit, man, it has to be better. I mean, it has to be better. It's gone from wearing the wrong cleats in a game and slipping and falling down on the field to outright getting burned to miscommunications and miscues in the secondary. Now, listen, it's 4 games in. They're 2-2. Turns out they are what we thought they were, and that appears to be a slightly or maybe even slightly above average football team, but closer to the mean than you might have thought given all the preseason hype. And we are as responsible, and by we, I mean media, we are as responsible for preseason hype as anybody. It's why you see such fiery columns and tweets being written, because it's not just that the team lost, but the team made a lot of people look wrong about what the team should be. And people in the media don't like to be made to look wrong, because that's all we have is what we say or write or whatever. But what I will say to you is I don't think the defense needs to be nuked. I think the secondary needs a dramatic adjustment, because when Christian Fulton tried his damnedest to stay in that game. He did stay in that game, and that's a credit to him. He has been by far and away their best corner. And there were, I counted at least 4 times scrolling back through my Twitter feed that he came limping off the field and had to miss some snaps, and bless him. He went back out there and tried to get it done. But the explosive plays, 9 plays of 30 plus yards through 4 games, Arizona, Seattle, against the Colts. And then yesterday, Zach Wilson, Corey Davis went out there and ate, and good for Corey. But when Kendall brings up, the wide receivers for the Jets not being that good, that's fine. That's all well and good. They were getting better separation than the Titans receivers were yesterday. I wouldn't take the Titans receivers, the ones that they trotted out yesterday, over the ones that were playing for the New York Jets. Would you? 615-737-1045. Dom is in Memphis, wants to weigh in on this Monday Blues edition of the Buck Reising Show. What's up, Dom?
Hey, what's going on, Buck?
Not much, buddy.
Yeah, it's good to finally get a chance to talk to you, man. So my thing is, like a lot of people are just glossing over the fact about Tannehill and his pocket presence. To me, it wasn't really that good yesterday. Sacked 7 times. I don't think you can attribute all of that to the offensive line. Some of that you got to put on Tannehill. I don't know if he's not making, the right pre-snap adjustments. If he's not calling the right pass protection. It's something going on there, especially if you consider the fact that, last week he had 7-8 rush attempts and 0 this week. I don't know if Vrabel is telling him to protect himself.
Wait, Dom. The first play of the Titans the first play of the game for the Titans on offense was a Tannehill scramble. And listen, I appreciate the call, 615-737-1045. It was a boot action play that they run. He kept it and he made the play with his legs. I just told you what the problem was. And we'll talk about the offensive line, because I'm not excusing the offensive line by any stretch of the imagination. But you can't love Ryan Tannehill because he hands in the pocket to deliver the throw in previous years. And because this year he's not getting that extra fraction of a second to deliver the throw while getting blasted. He's just getting blasted. You can't come back and bury him for that the next week. Look at the receivers. Look at the lack of separation down the field. Tannehill's holding on to that ball because he's waiting for anybody to come open. And then when he starts to target guys, he went at Cam Batson so many different times yesterday, covered up, couldn't get it to him. Cam Batson was begging for a flag because he's 5'8" and he's easy to cover up. And nobody's throwing a 5'8" receiver a goal line fade like they were doing in the preseason and expecting him to make that play. You had drops as well. Ryan Tannehill is holding on to that football because he's waiting for the skill position players to make a play, to find ways to get off of their coverage. And yesterday they were completely and totally unable to do so. Outside, Josh Reynolds tried to make plays. And maybe you think Josh Reynolds should have come up with that pass in the end zone. It would have been a spectacular catch. Josh Reynolds is not that. He is not A.J. Brown. He is not Julio Jones. And so he did not come up with that catch. Would have been incredible if he did. He didn't. And that was the kind of talent that you were working with out on the field. And we'll get to Josh Reynolds later on in the show. But the criticism today is not for Tannehill. In fact, there was one play that Tannehill pointed out to us specifically. And Lucas, if we can bring up that audio of the one specific throw that we asked him about in the red zone, because the red zone execution was poor against the NFL's best red zone defense, turns out, shocking to nobody. But Ryan Tannehill kind of walked us through a red zone sequence where he specifically missed the throw. And when I went back and watched that game this morning, it's about one of the few that Ryan Tannehill wasn't able to accurately throw and just not have a play made by the wide receiver or the receiver, the tight end, the running back, whomever. This was the Titans quarterback speaking to us yesterday.
Yeah, definitely. That was one early in the red zone. It was totally on my fault. They were in a man pressure look. That's typically they peel the pressure with the back coming out of the backfield, and it was wide open the flat. They didn't peel, so that's where the ball's got to go. I anticipated them peeling, but got to make sure. So that was 100% on me.
That's the only one that's 100% on him. That's it. You got criticism for Ryan Tannehill today? You're either wrong or not watching. 615-737-1045 is the number. Let's go to Isaac, who's in Nashville, who wants to weigh in. What's up, Isaac?
Hey, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing fantastic.
I wish I could say the same. Yesterday, my question is, when are we going to start holding this offensive calling more accountable? Is there a possibility, if things keep getting worse with the offensive calling, that we see a change in the middle of the season? Is there somebody else in the NFL or around that could kind of maybe step in and take that role? I mean, hats off to Tannehill. To me, by getting blasted as many times as he got blasted and still coming up, pulling us back in the game, taking it into overtime, you can't ask anymore from him or Derrick Henry, man. I don't know, man. It's rather stressful and disappointing, but at the same time, those guys are giving it all they got. I mean, you can't play the Titans and not think that they just gonna lie down. So, but my question is, what can we do about this offensive calling? Or is there a change that can be made? Is J-Rob going to step in possibly, or how does that go? That's my question.
Well, and thank you for the call, Isaac. 615-737-1045. What I'll tell you is, what did Mike Vrabel do when his defense was historically bad under a first-time play call? Gave Shane Bowen a promotion. Wasn't there a promo, Lucas, running on this radio station? One of the few that I had approval over with. Well, that's not true. I'm saying that mostly tongue in cheek because I hear some of them and they just take the most ridiculous things that I say. But anyway, there was a promo running on this radio station of me talking about Mike Vrabel after last season promoting Shane Bowen and just saying Mike Vrabel just gave y'all double middle fingers. He's doing it his way, and that's the way. I believe that was the case. Todd Downing, I won't say that there's a 0% chance that Todd Downing gets fired in season because there's always a decimal or percentage point of a chance that something would happen. But Mike Vrabel's history, and more important, his loyalty, would indicate that he is not, unless this thing goes to hell. And listen, silver lining, if you want any, and there's precious little, but there is one. They did not go down. Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill did not go down yesterday. They kept them in it until the very end. Now, you can criticize individuals, and you can take the sum of the parts and say, okay, that's a credit to all of them. And I don't think that Cam Batson or Nick Westbrook-Akina or Chester Rogers laid down yesterday. I don't think that Jack Rabbit or Christian Fulton or Harold Landry or Ola Adenyi, I don't think those guys laid down yesterday. They came back, they put it to overtime, they tried to win, they drove down the field, they missed a field goal at the end, and now we're all talking about death to the Titans, basically. They didn't stop. But again, the accumulation of issues. Why was Mike Vrabel so pissed off after? You know what? Why don't we do this on the other side? Remember how pissed off Mike Vrabel was after beating the Colts? I'll tell you exactly why and what it has to do with the New York Jets coming up next. And then we'll spend some time on the coordinators, because if you want a time to hold guys accountable, now is the time. We'll do it. Your phone calls as well. You'll hear from the head coach on some of these subjects. And of course, he will join us. He will be at the podium at 12 o'clock. Mike Vrabel would not want to get on the radio show today, I would imagine. I don't think that's what Mike's got on his dossier today. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
The Titans took a bad loss against the Jets yesterday.
Snap, set, kick, no good. Wide left.
Talk about it all day on Reaction Monday on your home for Titans football. 104.5 The Zone.
But I assumed because he was wearing an Ohio State pullover and he looked, he didn't look gray and miserable and unkept and unshaven. I thought it was an old video.
The happiest he's been in months.
Oh, he was glowing, positively radiant. And not just because a young woman was, bumping and grinding up and down on him.
Lost to the Bengals, hopped on a red eye to Columbus to wash it all away.
Now we'll play this audio for you at some point. I don't think now is the time because there's too many people waiting on the phone lines that want to talk about the Titans.
Yeah, we'll read the room.
Yeah, but let me assure you, good people, that we will get to Urban Meyer here momentarily because apparently your boy stayed in Ohio over the weekend and decided to go bar hopping with the locals, the ones who formerly, his former constituency is King Urban Meyer of the Ohio State Buckeyes.
I think it was Travis Haney that tweeted the picture of that coffee table in the Meyer household with just loaded with pictures. Said Shelley just rage flipped this in their house.
Oh, goodness. What a time. What a time to be alive. Thank God for the internet. 615-737-1045 is the number. We've been talking about the Titans. What concerns you the most about what you saw yesterday? Let's take one call. We'll go back to them. But I want to make sure that I tell people what was most concerning to me because, not to sound like a D-bag, but after all, it is my show. 615-737-1045. MJ is in Nashville and wants to talk about the wide receivers. What's up, MJ?
Hey, there's really two glaring problems with the Titans. One is the horrific lack of depth in the receiving corps. I mean, it's just so apparent, and it's been a problem we've had for the last several years, and that's what's so disconcerting about it is that this is a problem that should have been solved. And you don't solve it by hiring one aged a superstar who can't stay on the field. So, and the second is our DBs are playing with their backs to the frigging football. They look like college players out there. What do you think?
Hey, thanks for the call, MJ. 615-737-1045. Isn't it funny that all we spent time talking about this offseason was how good the wide receiver depth was? That was before Marcus Johnson went to IR and before Julio Jones and A.J. Brown came up with hamstring injuries and before we realized that Des Fitzpatrick wasn't going to be even remotely close to sniffing an active roster in any way, shape, or form.
When those things happen, your depth is no longer that good, right? Your depth is good until four guys go down.
My guy, MJ, Chester Rogers was never meant to be your one. Chester Rogers was meant to be your four. The issue, MJ, is that the depth is gone, and you've already run through the depth through 4 weeks of the NFL season, and it doesn't look like it's not just the aged superstar in Julio Jones that was meant to be the solution. No, the 4th round draft pick was supposed to make the active roster, and turns out he can't even get called up when the depth has gone the way that it's gone. Not even a Saturday activation and reverting back to the practice squad after the game. Marcus Johnson, training camp all-star, and until such time as he proves otherwise, he will remain solely a training camp all-star. He remains on injured reserve. A.J. Brown did not have hamstring issues at the time that we were discussing the depth of the wide receiver corps. So I appreciate his perspective. I understand his frustration. I also think that's a bit of recency bias and something, try and remove yourself from the situation and also think about what the hell the rest of the roster currently looks like. Because I honestly think they did their best to try and fix it. It's just everything fell to bleep.
What would you say is the deepest position on this roster right now?
Right now?
Yes.
Oh, wow. It can't be defensive line because Murchison just went on IR. It can't be pass rusher because Weaver and Dupree, as we sit here on a Monday, are unavailable. Sure as hell in wide receiver. I don't think
none of the above. Okay.
None. I'm going to go ahead and say none. Hit the nuclear option. 615-737-1045. Here's the biggest issue to me. All right. The biggest issue to me is that the injuries that they're coming up with, ACL recovery for Lawan and Dupree, hamstring issues for Julio and AJ. It's not like these are things, a concussion for Roger Saffold, potentially, or at least he was removed. We do not know that he was officially diagnosed with a concussion. Let me not speak recklessly, but he was removed from that game and did not finish because he was placed in the concussion protocol. Your roster is on the fringe. It's exactly my biggest issue is that your depth right now through 4 weeks is perilously thin. You have no solutions. And the things that are out there on the market, they aren't going to help you. These things that are out there that are still left to be re-signed, Kenny Vaccaro does not give you a better chance to win than Dane Cruikshank does right now. Golden Tate, Golden Tate wasn't a good option when free agency, it wasn't a good option like 3 years ago when Titans fans were saying that J-Rob should be fired if he didn't trade for Demaryius Thomas. You remember that? That was a thing that happened. I was sitting in the media room while Titans fans were screaming at the top of their lungs that the Titans did not do something to acquire the corpse of Demaryius Thomas and a rapidly diminishing Golden Tate. This was like 3 years ago. So what's left out there doesn't make you better. You're riding with the parts that you got. Now, it doesn't mean that they won't churn the bottom of the roster, but I'm just saying, it's like the backup quarterback at Tennessee. Harrison Bailey's the best player on the roster until he gets out there and you see that he very clearly is not.
Austin Stanley tweeted at us, said inside linebacker has the most depth right now, right? The only position with everybody still standing. But the point is, right, people complaining about wide receiver depth. The inside linebacker spot, you could say, is deep right now. If Rashaan Evans and Jayon Brown go down, it's no longer deep. That's the thing.
Jayon's not even starting. Jayon's not starting. David Long has started. Jayon Brown is struggling to get healthy. So to talk and listen, depth assumes that the starters are good in the first place. And Rashaan Evans,
he's just talking about as far as health.
But then Jayon. I mean, yes, Monty, David Long, and Rashaan Evans are all available to play. Jayon Brown played in spurts, but he is not a full-time starter at this point. And Jayon Brown arguably is your best inside linebacker, even though some of you have been clamoring for David Long. The concern is that they are ravaged top to bottom right now with every position. You know where the best depth is? It's a damn quarterback. Just because Logan Woodside doesn't have to do anything. He's sitting there praying to God that he's not the one who has to go out there behind that offensive line and get sacked more than any quarterback in the league. Oof. When we come back, we'll continue to take your calls. We will address the play calling situation on both sides. Todd Downing and Shane Bowen. And listen, I even saw some fire Craig Aukerman tweets yesterday. Everybody's getting the smoke. That's up next. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
Titans head coach Mike Vrabel and voice of the Titans, Mike Keith, take your questions about yesterday's game on the Mike Vrabel Show. Tonight at 6 on 104.5 The Zone.
mentions because there's a Jets fan who has now weighed in on the conversation. At Boap01 writes, the most powerful part of being a Jets fan is watching opposing fans go into an existential crisis after the New York Jets pull out a modest win, which is so spot on as analysis. I felt great for Jets fans yesterday. They wanted that so badly. They were booing because the Jets did their best Tennessee Titans offensive impression when the Titans won the toss and elected to defer. Zach Wilson and the offense get out there on the field. The first series is run, pass, 3 and out. It's like watching Todd Downing call plays for the opposing sideline. And immediately after the first series of the first few minutes, barely seconds of that game, Jets fans were booing, just booing loud, booing viciously. And they continued up until the Jets fans were like, oh, wait a minute. The Titans can't score on our defense. This may actually be a game. And it was a game for quite some time. 9-7 was basically the score for the majority of that afternoon until things started to break open, particularly on the Titans secondary. Zach Wilson finding a couple of receivers deep for big scoring plays. Corey Davis having a revenge game for the ages. It may be the best Corey Davis performance that the Jets get all year. And somehow the Titans were the only defense that couldn't figure out, if you take away Corey Davis, Zach Wilson can't do much. Well, they couldn't take away Corey Davis. And Zach Wilson found a way to make plays down the field. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved. You'll hear from the head coach, Mike Vrabel, at noon Central Time. He will speak to the assembled Nashville media back at St. Thomas Sports Park. We will carry that because obviously I'm still in New York, so I will be unable to attend. But we've been asking you guys on social media and on the phone lines, what questions would you have for the head coach today? And some of them have been quite creative, but I know that most of them are wildly inappropriate. Let's go back to the phones. 615-737-1045. Gunner is in Hendersonville. He wants to weigh in on the play calling, which is timely because that's also something I'd like to talk about right now.
Hey, Buck, how you doing?
I'm doing great, bud. What you got?
Hey, so I noticed it against Seattle, but it kind of got overlooked because we ended up winning that game in overtime. But I believe in Seattle, the first half, I think we had 2 field goals that we settled for, and obviously didn't get overlooked this game. We were up 9-0 midway through the second, and it could have easily just been 21-0 if you capitalize and score in the red zone there. And I think we're missing that Arthur Smith red zone efficiency in that play calling. And also, after the past 2 drafts, I'm curious, outside of Christian Fulton, who has been your favorite pick? Now, I know you can't rely on draft picks to come in and help if you expect your team to be great like we want the Titans to be. But, yeah, I'm just curious in that. I want to hear your thoughts on the red zone offense. I'll hang up and listen. Appreciate you.
Thanks for the call, Gunner. 615-737-1045. So who's been my – did he ask who's been my favorite pick? I'll start with the play calling because that's really where I want to focus for the next couple of segments. But what was his point about the draft pick, Lucas?
I didn't catch that. I just caught him asking about red zone play calling.
He said something, outside of Christian Fulton. I know you can't rely on your draft picks, but what's been your favorite draft pick? Well, what other one do I have to pick from? Because none of them are out on the field. Des Fitzpatrick's on the practice squad. Isaiah Wilson's probably down the block from me right now. He's on the Giants practice squad. You have Christian Fulton, who's been a stud and fought his way through that game and to little avail because his teammates around him, especially in the secondary, or especially the corners. I don't think that Kevin Byard played a bad game. I think that Dane Cruikshank had a bonehead defensive pass interference on Corey Davis that set up an easy score for the New York Jets to just outmuscle the Titans defense in the red zone for them. But let's not get distracted by that. Let's focus on the play call. So, and by the way, things aren't going swell for Arthur Smith in Atlanta either. I've seen some pretty heavy criticism of the Arthur Smith experience without Derrick Henry. But what made Arthur special here in Tennessee is how diverse his run game was, how diverse his schematics were for the rushing attack, where you're getting multiple guys out of the backfield. By the way, I thought the best play call that Todd Downing had all day was the touchdown pass. It was Tannehill's only touchdown pass, but the touchdown pass to Cam Batson, where they have him lined up in the backfield. You got Derrick Henry split out wide. You found ways to spring the guy open easy 6. It was a beautiful play design. It was spicy. I don't think because Todd Downing lacks diversity of thought, and I don't want to say lacks diversity of thought because I'm sure Todd Downing has forgotten more about offensive football than I'll ever know. But because we're doing the criticism of Todd Downing today, rightfully so, their run game seems to lack that kind of diversity. Now, the run blocking was good yesterday. It wasn't great, but it was good enough to have a substantial run game. Derrick Henry, God love him. He's the one who is least going to get criticized today because he fought his ass off. And frankly, I thought the Titans offensive line, even though they had parts coming in and out, Ben Jones going down, Taylor Lewan going down, Roger Saffold getting not returning with a concussion. Both Lewan and Ben Jones did return, but they did find ways to make plays in the running game. But it's still, run Derrick Henry into, in between the tackles over and over and over again. You have the odd toss play when you can clearly tell that the defense is going to stack the box and load up, or I think it was a 4th and 1 that they were getting ready to convert. Tannehill checked out of what was the play call, ended up tossing it to Derrick Henry. They made a play. It was a great move by Ryan Tannehill. But that's something that's incorporated into Todd Downing's offense, right? So you want more out of Downing because of what you had with Arthur Smith, but Arthur Smith is also hurting without Derrick Henry because he's working with the former. I think who's the Atlanta starting running back right now? It's like Mike Davis and Cordell
Patterson, who had 3 touchdowns on Sunday.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're trying to do things creatively with their run game. The fact that Cordell Patterson is scoring 3 touchdowns for anybody is, again, a tribute to Arthur Smith.
He's been consistently good. I mean, at least you look at fantasy numbers. He's been consistent.
I saw my friends who cover the Falcons tweeting about, I think Cordell Patterson on an offense that includes Kyle Pitts and Calvin Ridley. They're saying, I think that Cordell Patterson is the Falcons' most efficient weapon, which is insane. So shout out Art.
It doesn't surprise Tennessee fans, but it's wild to see him just getting the ball out of the backfield and then mossing people out wide on go routes.
Vols fans rejoice. And we will speak about the Vols a little bit. We'll have Austin Burlage of Power T Tape join us at 12:30 for our weekly installment because Tennessee put it on Missouri over the weekend. My God, Missouri had to fire their defensive coordinator after that went down. Jesus. 615-737-1045. Let's go to Gil in Cali who wants to weigh in. What's up, Gil? Okay, Gil just dropped. Let's go to Ricky in West End who wants to talk about Tannehill.
Hey, Buck.
What's up, buddy?
Hey, so two things. The first one I want to focus on is Ryan Tannehill. So I'm a Dolphins fan. I've watched the Dolphins my whole life, and living in Nashville, I get to watch the Titans too. So I cheer for both as long as they're not playing each other. So I've gotten the full Ryan Tannehill experience. What the Titans did so great with Ryan Tannehill the last 2.5 years until this season was they kept him upright, they put a brick wall in front of him, and they ran the ball super efficiently. They can still run the ball efficiently, but that wall that was built in front of Ryan Tannehill is crumbling at a rapid rate right now, and this is who Ryan Tannehill is when he's under pressure. He's going to hold the ball too long. He's going to get strip sacked. He's going to take hits. So you're just like, wow, I'm surprised he's getting back up. He's a tough guy, so he can take it. But I think right now he's on pace for 66 sacks this season. Even he's going to be falling out at some point in the season if they don't fix it. And you can't rely on him to fix it because he has no feel in the pocket. He can't work in that 3-foot bubble and step to the left and avoid a hit and all this kind of thing. He just can't do it. It's not in his game. The other point I had is we came into this season with 3 of our biggest name players that have national knownness coming off of major injuries with Taylor Lewan, Julio Jones, and Bud Dupree. And then to top it off, they decided, hey, let's draft a guy who hasn't played in 2 years and has a bad back. Oh, and then let's draft a tackle and not let him play left tackle and try to make him a flex player because it's super easy in the NFL to learn how to play every position in the O-line as a rookie. I mean, everybody can do it. We saw him run an L drill at some pro combine, and I guarantee he can play guard. It's ridiculous. And so just with those 5 players right there, 5 players who should be starters, all 5 of them are either horrible right now or they're not playing. How do you win with that?
Well, you don't. You lose to the Jets. That's I don't think I could sum it up any better than you just did, Ricky. And listen, to Tannehill's credit, he's fighting, man. He's fighting out there. He kept it close, but it doesn't. I mean, that you can't have failures all across the board around him like you did, and then have Tannehill have zero margin for error. Because Ricky, I understand what you're saying. Your frustrations as a Dolphins fan. I have lived with a Dolphins fan in college. I understand what the Ryan Tannehill experience has been like for Dolphins fans. Fins up is not something that was uttered very often in our apartment, except to mock the Dolphins fans. But yeah, you just asked me how you can win with that, and I would say look at the loss, look at the result yesterday. You can't. We'll talk about the personnel decisions because I think that's has a big part to play coming up next. Your phone calls as well. Austin Burlage of Power T Tape, a quick diversion to give Titans fans a break from the suffering and misery, and we'll talk about the Vols' big win at Missouri. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
The Raiders and Chargers play 4 quarters on Monday Night Football. Coverage starts at 7 on your home for Sunday, Monday, and Thursday Night Football. 104.5 The Zone.
to be on again with the two hardest working guys in the biz. Buck, I don't know if you know this, but Lucas has been in since 6 in the morning, so getting after it today.
Yeah, let him whine a little louder on social media.
Yeah, I've been complaining about it all day, Austin. He's well aware.
I had to. It's too easy.
You know why Austin is well aware? Because he saw me bitching about you bitching earlier, and so now he had to bring it back to the forefront. Just completely and totally ridiculous. Unbelievable. 615. Oh, no, I don't know why I just gave out the number. Austin Burlage is here. I'm all kinds of distracted. All right, Austin, Vols.
Yes, sir.
Missouri. It was an utter ass-kicking from start to finish in favor of Tennessee. They put 60-plus points on a team. I know Missouri's defense sucked. We talked about it all last week. How did they do it? What was allowing them to have so much success? And what was Missouri right in firing parts of their defensive stat yesterday?
Yeah, that's a lot there. So what I thought was interesting, and we said it last week, right, was, okay, Missouri was terrible at defending the run. But I think you could look at it and say, well, their two losses on the year were to Kentucky and Boston College, who were 8-0 going into the weekend, and then obviously Kentucky got a big win over Florida for the first time since I've been alive at home, and then Boston College took Clemson down to the wire at Clemson. So, two good teams, and you wondered, like, well, were they bad at defending the run because those are actually two good teams, or like what was it? And when we watched the film on them, it seemed like, it was more of an issue of they just could not fit the run appropriately. And when I say that, I just mean like getting their defensive players into the offensive gaps, like correctly. And there's ways to do that where you can have fewer defenders than there are gaps, and you can kind of steal gaps and things like that. But that gets to like higher level. Like at the most basic structure is you want a guy in every gap, right? In theory. And Missouri was not able to do that well. And what I thought was interesting, and I'm going to pull it up if I can, but there was an article that they switched their entire formation, which they went from a 4-2-5, which is pretty common, and then tried to play a 3-3-5. And not only that, but they moved some of their defensive linemen to playing middle linebacker in that 3-3-5. So not only did Missouri have struggles defending the run in their two prior games, they said, no, let's change our entire scheme to play Tennessee's offense and see if we can do it that way. And it did not work.
No, in fact, it worked to the tune of almost 470 yards on the ground alone, which is a complete. I thought, again, it was like Vanderbilt being shut out. Was it 62-0 last week by Georgia? I thought my ESPN app was broken when I went to check it the next day. I could not believe what I was seeing about the Tennessee Missouri game. So in saying that, Austin, because you obviously are focused on the X's and O's and the decision making of the staff and the schematics of the football team, have you ever seen what Missouri did work successfully or work in any way, shape, or form when a coaching staff just decides, hey, let's go wholesale. Let's try to change up what we do. Institutional knowledge be damned, even if what we've been doing hasn't been working well, let's try to completely switch it up and it blow up in their face as dramatically as you saw it happen to Missouri on Saturday.
Yeah, right. I have not. What I will say, I'll give Missouri a little credit in terms of, like, it wasn't totally off base. Like, there was an article by Dave Matter and I'll tweet it out, but basically saying, this defense has had success against Heupel in the American Athletic Conference before, and that is correct. Like, one team that did it well was Tulsa. And actually, I would think that Missouri, one of their secondary coaches, is from the Tulsa staff that beat Heupel. So I think that's where the idea for implementing this came from, and they did have success with it. They're doing that. But with them, they would usually bring like a corner from the boundary, so they were still getting guys into the run. Like, they were stealing guys that were maybe like unconventional. You wouldn't think of a corner going up and fitting in the run, but they would do that, and they were able to somewhat bend but not break, and they had the offense to match it. But I have not seen
like what they did where they just totally changed scheme entirely. And not only that, but they were playing defensive linemen at middle linebacker in a new package. And one of them was a true freshman. That's pretty unheard of. And I don't understand, this is me personally, that maybe there's some issue with the staff, but I thought it was a little bit knee-jerk of firing the defensive line coach when like the scheme wouldn't lend itself to defending that well. Like they did not have the appropriate scheme, so then it felt reactionary to just, well, somebody's got to go because it was that bad, so it's you because we don't like you. I don't know. Maybe there's something going on there. Obviously, we've seen it at Tennessee where Pruitt fired his defensive line coach and then took over the line duties, but that was probably more internal stuff. And when you think about success in major Power 5 football, like you think about the quarterback position and the line, so to lose your defensive line coach by choice in the middle of the season is certainly head scratching to me. But again, maybe there's something else going on there.
Austin Burlage of Power T Tape is with us on 104.5 The Zone. We take a quick diversion from the suffering of Titans fans to celebrate what the Vols did on Saturday. I'm currently watching Tyon Evans, his 92-yard rush for a touchdown. Let's talk about what Tennessee did on the defensive side of the ball, though, Austin, because we talked about Tyler Beatty, the Missouri running back, who's as big a threat in the receiving game as he is in the rushing attack, and he did precious little in both. I mean, 21 carries for 41 yards was abysmal, and he did even less as a receiving option. What was Tennessee doing to neutralize successfully Missouri's best weapon?
Yeah, I think they just stayed aggressive. That's something Tennessee has done all year. Obviously, they've defended the run really well and have played well on the defensive line. So one thing that I think Missouri does really well offensively is their motions and shifts. They have a lot of eye candy. And then they run, and Beatty scored one of his touchdowns on it, that weak side outside zone play. They do block that really well. They play it really well, but Tennessee really aggressive up front, and we're able to defeat blocks. And I hate to reduce it to that because there's scheme can get really complicated, but at the end of the day, the Tennessee defense was just so aggressive with him. And obviously we're very aware of him in the passing game, where he's, I believe, coming into the game was their number one receiving option as well.
Yeah.
And so, just a huge focus of their offense, and it's somewhat of, I hate to use this word, but Belichick type philosophy, where it's like, hey, we're going to eliminate your best guy, and you're going to have to figure it out with whoever else you got. And, they couldn't do it. So I felt good about that. And some of that too, though, is playing team, complementary football, and the offense getting out to such a big lead and eliminating some of what Missouri probably wanted to do in the game plan, right? When you're down 28-3, a lot of what you were hoping to do goes out the window.
So, Austin, overarching takeaway, given how bad Missouri was defensively, Tennessee Tech literally defended the run far better against Tennessee than Missouri did on Saturday. What can you really take away? Whether it's evaluating Hendon Hooker, the wide receiver core, which, by the way, Jalen Hyatt, again, a non-factor. What can you truly take away that you might have actually learned about this offense as we see it take its biggest leap of the season? It's just against probably the worst defense in the SEC.
Yeah, that's a great question, Lucas. So I think you hit on it with the quarterback. I don't really know if there's a lot you can take away from the run game. I think we already knew Small and Evans were really good. I think we thought really, really highly of Evans. And so, I think we didn't really learn much from that because they've changed their entire defense and they didn't play it well, like we've talked about. But I think Hooker did play well enough to really eliminate any and all doubt of if there's a competition and whether or not, is Milton healthy? Or I think the way that Hooker was able to throw the ball downfield, like the first touchdown to Peyton, I forget who he hit on another one. But yeah, his downfield accuracy was much improved and ran the ball well, stayed healthy. So I think we can take that away, that he played well and has separated himself in game snaps as the guy. as far as like looking ahead, I think South Carolina's not a great team either, but I don't think they're going to do what Missouri tried to do. So I don't know if you can really take the offensive output and apply it down the road as much, and especially because we still have some pretty good defenses on the schedule. So, but yeah, I mean, it feels good to win one and put up that many points for sure.
Austin Burlage at Austin_Burlage is where you can follow him, his work for Power T Tape. We discuss the Vols result every Monday with him, and we appreciate him taking some time. Thank you, buddy.
Thanks, guys. Hope it gets better.
Well, listen, you know this better than anybody, Austin. A little bit of disaster is good for business sometimes. So we'll get back to the phone lines.
That is true.
615-737-1045 is how you jump back in on the Titans conversation, because we did want to make sure that we talked about the Vols. The result was ridiculous. And what happened in the SEC over the week, just the college football weekend, my God, across the board was wild. And so I do at some point this week want to talk about Kentucky upsetting Florida and trying to figure out who is actually the best team in the SEC between Alabama and Georgia, because this picture is much more wide open than I think any of us previously imagined. And frankly, college football just generally, who are really the true contenders in college football this year. But that will be a topic of conversation for another day. 615-737-1045 is how you get back in on the Titans blowing it against the New York Jets. What I want to say about the Titans before we go back to the phone lines is this. We had a caller earlier bring up the rookies, right? I can't remember if it was Ricky or who specifically tagged the rookies or the draft classes in to the previous conversation about play calling. But at what point and really where do you assign the blame for the fact that these rookies can't play, man? These draft classes, these last two, they can't get on the field. I'm not holding people at fault for, with Darrington Evans and the injury situation. There is some sympathy and some grace that I have for that. And of course, if Caleb Farley isn't practicing because of a different injury that's unrelated to the back, then you start to consider, what is happening here with their draft classes the last two seasons, and whose fault is it that they can't get on the field. But for the guys that are available, Chris Jackson was unavailable to go late in the game yesterday. So they put their best corner in the slot, and it's not where he's at his best. Christian Fulton moved inside. He played 18 snaps in the slot because Chris Jackson went down. Not even a thought was given to putting Elijah Molden out there into that situation when he was the star of the preseason and probably the best asset that it looked like that they had a part of their draft class, the one who could play right out of the gate. They clearly don't trust him enough to put him out there, even as their roster has been ravaged by injury. Instead, they got worse at two positions because they moved their best outside corner in. You have Dylan Radins, who's sitting out there in plain clothes with an offensive line that is in absolute tatters. How bad must he be if he's a healthy scratch consistently outside of a couple of weeks ago when they just desperately needed bodies along the offensive line? We're talking about Caleb Farley, who, and I had some people tweeting me about or DMing me about where they may have seen Caleb Farley and is he taking football seriously and should he be out in public if this is how it's going down. And I'm not, I didn't see it. I'm not here to do speculation. I'm just saying, for those people who are sending me those kind of messages, and there have been more than one, there have been a few, and trying to compare it back to the Isaiah Wilson situation, which is just an isolated disaster in and of itself. But it all comes back to one thing, that the draft class, whether it's because the coach doesn't like the players or because the players aren't good enough to play, they aren't making meaningful contributions. In fact, they're making next to none. These last two draft classes have set the Tennessee Titans back monumentally, and you're starting to see that pay dividends here as we get down the stretch when your depth is ravaged and you can't get guys to give you meaningful snaps. 615-737-1045. B has been waiting patiently. He's in Nashville. He wants to weigh in. What's up, B?
Hey, Buck. Hey, Buck.
What's up?
Not much. I was one of the ones that messaged you about Caleb Farley, too.
Oh, yeah?
And Yeah, I was. And I feel like, the last 3 draft classes have been terrible. Like, I can't just say the last 2. I feel like the last 3 been terrible because we don't have no production from them. Everything
No,
we get is from trade.
whoa, B, you're nuts. You're talking about Jeffrey Simmons, A.J. Brown, David Long, Nate Davis. You're talking about starters.
You can say that, but A.J. Brown, yeah, that's my favorite player for the Titans. But when you're not on the field, like you can't keep on going back to what used to be. Last year, okay, he did good. Yeah, it was good last year. But this is a whole new season. This is supposed to be our championship year and all this and that. Like, we can't keep on giving him passes. We didn't give Taylor a pass when he messed up for a game. So you can't give A.J. Brown a pass when he's injury prone, it seemed like. Right or wrong?
Well, listen, I appreciate the call. Listen, the 2019 draft class is one of the best draft classes that anybody's had in like NFL memory recently. Like, you don't hit on that many guys. These are meaningful players. A.J. Brown, his availability is critical. It will affect his contract negotiations that are sitting there on the horizon, quite certainly. But there is no denying that he is not one of the top 5 players on your team. Jeffrey Simmons, the same. David Long has been starting and playing in playoff games for you. Nate Davis is having a bad year, but he's had 2 kick-ass ones as a rookie and then as a sophomore. And you've seen him drop off a little bit. I'm curious about that because I don't know if it's just the offensive line as a whole because precious little has changed. But recall back to 2016 to 2017, where the Titans with DeMarco Murray had one of the best rushing attacks in the league and certainly had the best rusher, the top rusher in the AFC behind one of the best offensive lines. And then they come back the next year and Josh Klein stinks and Quentin Spain stinks. And everybody thinks Ben Jones stinks because the 2 tackles on either side of him stink. Like it was the 2 guards on either side of him stunk. So I don't know why it's not translating from year to year the way that you expect it to. But no, the emphasis is on these last 2 classes. The 2019 class is you can't hit on more players than John Robinson did. I love you, B, but that's a ridiculous statement. 615-737-1045. More of your phone calls when we come back. We will also talk a little bit more in detail about the situation with the secondary, Caleb Farley and Elijah Molden, and why they just can't seem to make an impact. I'm Buck Reising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
The Titans took a bad loss against the Jets yesterday.
Snap, set, kick, no good. Wide left.
Talk about it all day on Reaction Monday on your home for Titans football. 104.5 The Zone.
I am curious to hear. You know, I'll be transparent. All right, it's my job to cover the Titans, but the Mike Vrabel show for me is something that is it's, you know, I sit through enough press conferences. You know what I'm saying? So when Mike does that show, there's every once in a while I'll catch it, but I might actually listen tonight because this man is taking fire from all across the board. It's so interesting to me the way that people, at least Titans fans, look for reasons to hate Mike Vrabel. Now, maybe this isn't just exclusive to Mike, but doesn't it feel that way, Lucas? Like, just based on the interactions that we see on YouTube or on the phone lines or on Twitter. Now, I'm not saying you're not justified in being pissed today, but I don't think that Titans fans understand that they have an above average NFL head coach, even though they just lost to a winless New York Jets team. Like, that doesn't negate everything else that he has done well. It just means that they sucked for 1 week and that they need to do a hell of a lot more to get them back up off their feet. Why are they like this?
I think every fan base is like this.
Do you?
Yeah, I really do. There are Alabama fans that at some point or another said Nick Saban will not evolve with college football. We need to move on at some point circa, I don't know, 2015. I think this is every fan base.
Okay. Well, maybe I'm just being prisoner of the moment. I always find it funny. 615-737-1045. Now, I was hoping, you know, I know that Blaine and Mickey carried Vrabel's press conference on Monday, and I didn't happen to hear, or excuse me, on Friday rather, and that Jim Wyatt was getting just buried by people because he dared to ask Mike Vrabel a question about the Patriots and Brady last night, given that Mike, who is featured in the Tom Brady ESPN Plus documentary series that's getting ready to come out in November, by the way. Oh, you have, it seems Lucas has the audio of Mike Vrabel being asked by Jim Wyatt, because I didn't hear it in real time, but Lucas told me it was great comedy. So why don't we recall that moment just for a second, shall we?
You got your own team to worry about, but can you imagine what things will be like for Brady going back to New England this weekend?
That doesn't affect me one bit.
What do you think the atmosphere will be like?
Doesn't affect me one bit.
Anything that doesn't affect me.
That trails off as he's walking off the podium.
Well, and he looks like he's about to say something else that starts with an F when he's saying effect as he leaves the podium. But the head coach not in the mood. Now, Jimmy's getting buried for that. And that's just because people don't know how press conferences work and don't understand that Jimmy has asked 80,000 questions about the Jets by the time we get to the end of the press conference on Friday. And if Mike wants to be pissy about it, then that's entirely his right. But I was dying. Now, this would affect Jimmy's employment status, and I would never do that. I would never ask for him to put his own job in jeopardy because, of course, he writes for TennesseeTitans.com. But I so badly wanted Jimmy to go for the kill shot last night in our post-game press conference. I said, Jimmy, why don't you ask it? I was like giving him an elbow while we were sitting in the MetLife post-game interview room while we're able to, miserable up there because they just got beat by a terrible team. And I'm just like, Jimmy, now's your chance. Now's your chance. Go for it. Ask it. Do it. And of course he did. But God.
Like Peyton urging Eli to do the double bird.
That's exactly what it was. I'm like, Jimmy, I know you got a reputation. I know you're above this. I know that this directly affects whether you make your salary or not, but you should do it. So bad. 615-737-1045 is how you weigh in with your concerns about the Tennessee Titans. So Mike Vrabel will speak coming up next. In fact, why don't we give ourselves a little time to hear from the head coach right off the top? When we come back, Mike Vrabel will speak to the media, and we will ask the callers what questions they would have for the head coach. That's on the other side. I'm Buck Reising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Get Jason Martin and Ramon Foster on J. Mart and Ramon tomorrow morning from 6 to 10 on 104.5 The Zone.
we await the situation at St. Thomas Sports Park, because it is indeed a situation, or at least it was last night, I want to talk about what is happening with Todd Downing and Shane Bowen, because I've gotten a lot of questions about this. A lot of people are pissed about this. A lot of people want to know if the Tennessee Titans would do the unthinkable and make a coaching change, a coordinator change in season, given that people have been dying, been thirsty, been sweating Jim Schwartz's you-know-what for quite some time since they found out that he was going to be a senior defensive assistant back in Tennessee. And what I'll say to you is it's not as bad as it was last year. The defense is playing well, but, well, let me not say the defense is playing well, because you can't give up 27 points to a New York Jets team that was averaging 6 points a game. The defense choked when they needed them the most. When the offense wasn't able to find ways to get stops, your defense is inconsistent. And your secondary at this point, outside of Christian Fulton and Kevin Byard, is wildly unreliable. I don't have much confidence in Jackrabbit through 4 games. Don't feel great about Chris Jackson. Dane Cruikshank, just bonehead mistake to get that DPI on Corey Davis late in the game that set up a Jets touchdown. There were issues there that were multifold. And in fact, Mike Vrabel was asked about these defensive coverage busts, because now they have 9 plays for 30-plus yards on the season to go along with their 17, most in the league, 17 sacks of Ryan Tannehill behind that offensive line. Mike Vrabel was asked about that coverage bust. And before we hear from the head coach in real time, why don't we hear what the head coach had to say last night about his defense?
Many guys are there. At least we tried to actually cover them this time. Seattle, we chose not even to put a guy on them, but we'll try to go make the play when the ball's in the air and see if we can tackle the quarterback and not let him scramble around.
So he's taking a shot basically at his players and this is not something that he would say publicly if he hadn't already said it to the players themselves, but he's saying, yeah, it's better than what Seattle was. At least guys were in the area. I mean, think about that. Who had that streaking 54-yard touchdown reception from Zach Wilson? I'll pull up the scoring attempts.
It was
no.
I'm sorry. You're talking about the
I'm talking about yesterday. I'm talking about New York.
I think Corey Davis had the deep bomb.
Corey Davis had one deep bomb, but there was another 54-yard chunk play through the air. Keelan Cole had, I think it was Breon Borders beat, and Corey Davis, if he didn't, they were running side by side and ahead of Jackrabbit and Breon Borders, who of course was playing because Christian Fulton was in and out of that game. It was problematic for the Tennessee Titans across the boards. I mean, the injuries, man, multifold. And I'm sure Mike Vrabel is going to be asked for status updates on all these guys, and he will get precious little. But why don't we find out? Mike Vrabel at the podium right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot, Teresa. There's always things that are going to fall into some of those categories, right? It's going to be some execution. It's going to be it's always about the coaching, the playing, everything. When you don't have success, and ultimately we didn't. We did a lot of the good things, did a lot of things that we need to improve on, and then a few things that end up getting you beat. But we started the game, we just didn't convert in the red zone. Defensively, we started well, got off the field, did a nice job in some sudden change, but gave up X plays. Gave up X plays on the quarterback out of the pocket. We didn't get him, didn't tackle him, didn't make plays on the ball down the field. So it came down to a very close game, and we weren't able to win it. And that's going to be the execution of it. It's going to be the coaching of it. I'm not sure what the learning curve that you're referencing to Todd. So I just know that everybody, including me, it's starting with me. Got to be better to win.
After watching film, what were the biggest issues that resulted in 7 quarterback sacks?
Well, again, there's 3 processes, to a pass game. It's about getting open. It's about recognizing man and zone, running the correct route. It's about protection, holding up, and it's about the quarterback getting rid of the football and getting it to somebody quickly. And I would say all 3 of those. When the protection, when the quarterback starts to get hit, Then he wants to start to get rid of the ball sooner. And then maybe guys aren't open as quickly. And so it's just this process. And we need everybody to come together like we do when we have successful plays. You see that there's protection or there's guys blocking, and we're able to gain yards in a run game, or we're able to get it going on a screen that gets it started, and there's extra effort blocks down the field. So hopefully we can tie that all into the pass game and not get our quarterback hit and be able to make some plays there.
On the right side, this may go to what you just said, but was it more just kind of losing some battles on that right side in terms of the pass rush, or were they doing a lot of stunts and games, that kind of stuff?
Well, that's all part of it. I mean, they brought pressure. We got to do a better job picking up pressure, and somebody drops out and somebody else comes. Staying inside, things we're always going to teach, and being firm in the middle of the pocket and trying to get some certain width to it so that the quarterback can operate. And those are all things that we got to improve on. And when they pick, and we got to come back and make sure we're flattening off the penetrator. Those fundamental things that when they run a pick game, that there's no penetration and then you flatten it out, or if we're chipping, to be able to use our chip help and not set too deep and all those different things.
You mentioned in the combination of things that led to sacks, getting rid of the football from the quarterback. Do you think there were times where
there was times? Yeah.
Do you think there were times where the pocket navigation needed to be better? Where you needed to
What's pocket navigation?
Stepping up, moving from side to side.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think that's all part of it. And Ryan did do a nice job a couple times. And you worry about the ball when you're doing that. But there were times, to answer your question the first time, there were times where it needs to come out. And then, I think pocket presence is something I've always appreciated with Ryan, his ability to stay in there, to slide and deliver the football. But to do that, you talk about having some room to do that, to have a firm pocket inside, so that when he does slide away from one guy, he's not sliding into another. And it all goes hand in hand. And everybody, when we don't convert, we give up a sack on third down. It's about everybody. It's about knowing where the sticks are, running great routes, being open, and having the protection hold up.
60-plus minutes doing everything you can to win. How odd a decision is it to say we're going to send the field goal kicker out here and try and tie this game in the last minute of overtime?
I mean, that's just what the situation was. I mean, I wished we had caught the pass and get down closer to the goal line and been able to win. I don't know. I mean,
it didn't feel like an uncomfortable or odd moment to you there then?
It's a new moment. It's a new moment. I don't think I gave it that much thought. I just think that it was, here's where we are in a situation. We tried to, I think we were trying to score. I mean, we tried to hit a shot down there and we didn't connect with it with Ferk. Would have liked to not have the operation and have a delay a game, and but felt comfortable that Randy was going to kick it, and so I really hadn't given it that much thought to say. It just was the situation that was presented that we needed to kick a field goal at that point in time.
Consideration of going for two after your touchdown in regulation?
No. I think we're kind of had that last week.
Sorry.
That's okay.
With Ryan, how much can you help him with to get the ball out faster? 3-step drops, shotgun, or things like that to maybe help that side of the mechanics?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things that we can do, and there's we're confident in our passing game, and we can come back. We had some positive passes. We had some conversions on third down, and so there's a lot of things that we can do better. But it's not just about dropping back and throwing it in a second and a half. It doesn't really work like that, You have to be able to have some route distribution. Guys have to be able to get open. There's a timing mechanism to it, and then we have to protect better. So it's not just about catching it and raising up and throwing and thinking that somebody's going to be open for a positive gain.
Teams have generally been one of the best at red zone offense over your time here. Even yesterday, you moved the ball well, but then the red zone part wasn't there. What makes it so much different from, between the 20s to once you get inside the 20, and what specifically has to be better?
There's a lot less space. for them to cover. The ball has to come out quicker when you throw the football. You have to be precise. There has to be distribution. Guys have to get to spots quicker, horizontally, so that you're stretching the defense. You just don't have that much space vertically for them to have to cover. When you run the football, safeties are much tighter, much more involved. So you have to get in there and get those guys and dig them out. Just be precise. And, we weren't. We weren't where we needed to be. And, we're 2 for 2 in the red zone in the second half. And we were, obviously 0 for 3 in the first half.
Jets had a 3rd and 3 in overtime from the 21. They were spread out. Looked like you guys were running man. A couple of corners were at least 6-8 yards off the ball on 3rd and 3. Is that something that is a problem?
No, I don't know. I appreciate the question. I saw your Twitter, and I know you're going to take my quote like, "Yeah, we were wrong. Like we should have been pressed and haloed." And I get all that. We've done pretty well on 3rd down, and you guys talk to me almost every day. You take what I say, and you guys can do whatever you want with it. We're going to go in there and coach it at 12:30. Christian Fulton needs to be up and pressed, and it's 3rd and 10, and Rabbit needs not be 15 yards off. We're going to tell him that as soon as I meet with him.
Please, Reed, actually get a reversal on a spot yesterday. You never think it's worth challenging those things, and the replay looked at the one spot yesterday and moved it back. Did that surprise you in that moment?
No, called timeout. Tried to see if give him some extra time. I know that we get second guessed and questioned, a lot. But, we try to do things that try to help us win, and sometimes it doesn't work out that way. We try to get a short yardage stop, and, they gained an extra half a yard. It's disappointing. We had them in 2nd and 10, and felt like we liked the call, and just they were able to get 9.5 yards. And so we know how hard it is to stop them, with a half a yard. When you get them at 2nd and 10 at that point right there, we gotta do better, and we have been better to create 3rd and long. But we gave up too many yards and created a short yardage situation. Sorry, John.
Sorry. The X plays that you mentioned, I know you guys in general have wanted to be more aggressive in terms of coverage this year. I wonder if is that potentially, a downside, in trying to.
Well, you'd have to tell, where the penalty on Dane. Dane was standing there. He was the post safety, and he's got to play the ball. And the one that Corey caught by Breon was, I don't know, as close as you possibly could be to him, I guess. And then Rabbit looked back, and the guy gained separation on him. So, missed a tackle on Corey in man coverage. When you play zone, you got to have vision and break and go get the football. When you play man, you got to keep your eyes on your man, and you got to tackle. And we've got to continue to change up and to calls and mix them and let them complement each other, so that when we do play zone, we're disguising and that we can see in vision and let those things work for us, and then playing man and trying to affect the quarterback. And when we did, he was running around, and give him credit. They threw the ball, and one of our better players who's playing really well, Harold, had a couple shots at him, and give Zach credit for getting out of there. And unfortunately we weren't able to get him on the ground.
Back to the conversation about the cushion. One of the things that you have said before is that against bunch sets you can't press all 3, you'll get picked. But is there a line where you are too far off and giving it too much space simply because they're in that look?
On the stacked one or the 3 guys?
Trips.
I don't know which one you're referencing. Usually somebody's up. Well, somebody usually up, and then 2 guys are comboing, and that would just be comboing at the sticks, and trying to make sure that we're not too loose there, but we're not getting not picking ourselves either. Knowing where your leverage is, knowing where your help is, and if you get beat where your help is, well then we need better help. And if you get beat across your leverage, then that's your own fault.
How did you evaluate how your receivers did yesterday?
Nobody did well enough. Head coach, assistant coaches, quarterback. We've been through this before. When you lose, We all have to do more. We all have to be better. I'm confident that we will. And so we'll see who we have this week. We'll see who's available this week and get them ready to go on the road to play a division team.
Harold in the pass rush, he was very active, but you only had one sack. What can you do to affect the quarterback a little bit more than you did yesterday?
Well, I mean, there were times where we affected him. Again, there were times where we forced him out, couldn't tackle him. He made some plays down the field, and there were some times where we affected him, and he didn't make plays down the field. Threw it short to receivers or overthrew receivers. Third down, we affected him. Scrambled. Jayon made a great play, something we tried to coach our guys when the quarterback's out of the pocket. Jayon knocked his guy out of bounds and came and tackled the quarterback short of the first down. To me, that's a great play. It's a play that we've coached for a long time, and it was really cool to see Jayon do it, push his guy out of bounds, come out of coverage because his guy can't catch the ball anymore, and tackle the quarterback. Now, there were times where we didn't affect him enough.
What's Elijah got to do to get more in the equation? I know you lost Chris at some point, but I guess you chose to go with Christian.
Yeah, we did. We made a decision there. Just, I think that we'll continue to look at Elijah and see where he fits, and obviously see how he can help us. He's did a nice job in there blitzing, and so we'll have to make decisions, based on game plan, based on who they have and what their game, what their style of play is, and see where we can, he can help us.
Mike, 8 penalties for 98 yards. Some of that from having some new faces in because of injuries, and that's something that you've been traditionally a clean unit on.
Well, Taylor Lewan didn't get set on the first one. We're trying to go fast. He had a hands to the face. Ola's a special teams player. He pushed the punter in his chest. Ola thought he was engaging the punt. He was 10 yards from the returner. Wasn't a blindside block. Didn't hit him with his helmet. Pushed him in his chest with his hands. Dane's pass interference in the middle of the field. Help me out here as we try to go through the penalties. I can go through them all. I just got to remember which ones they were. Yep. Guy blocked back. Questionable. Big pile. They must have saw the guy it's whatever they saw. I don't know. And that's what they saw. Do I agree with them? Sometimes yes. Sometimes no. And so I don't think that had much to do with it.
When trying to fix red zone inefficiencies, how much tinkering with play calling is there? How much more? You guys work on it ad nauseum in practice like you do. What else can you do?
Well, we played a really good red zone team. We knew they were rated number 1, but we can keep working at it, keep understanding it, keep giving ourselves positive plays. I don't think you want 2nd and 10 and some of those plays that get you behind the sticks. I think if it can just stay and do what we've been doing when we have successful drives, is being efficient. Yesterday, as good as their front was, that was the most efficient that we had run the football. We had our most number of efficient runs at 4 or more yards than we had all season up to date. So that's something that's positive, and hopefully we can build on that. And when we get down to the red zone, just everybody has to be precise, understanding if they give us a different look than maybe what we saw, being able to adjust to it. But it's something that we've been able to score touchdowns here in the red zone, and we haven't been as good as what we are. We understand every year is different, and maybe see how teams are playing us if they're doing anything different, which they didn't do anything different coming in. They played cover 4, they played cover 3 in the red zone, and again, we just weren't able to come out of there with touchdowns.
Worried are you that Ben, Roger, Taylor all are having a hard time playing start to finish in games right now?
I'm not worried. I know that they got banged up yesterday, and appreciate their toughness. And the next guy's got to go in, and this would be a big week for us to see, how we can recover recover physically, recover mentally.
Do you expect him to return from injury this week to practice?
Probably too soon to be able to, know that. Hopefully we were able to get plenty of treatment and get the guys, ready to go. I know we have some guys that could come off of IR, designated return, so we'll see. Hopefully that Darrington can practice Wednesday and evaluate him, and Marcus worked last week and Brady worked last week, so hopefully we'll see where that goes during the week.
That's at the AJ and Julio. Any chance on either or both of them practicing, you think? Or?
I think there's always a chance. I don't know, however, whatever percentage you want to put on that or type that in, but always a chance.
That's good. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Titans head coach Mike Vrabel. I beat it just in time to the music, Lucas. They were quick on the trigger again with that music, answering the media's questions about a great many things. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved. What did you hear from the head coach that you agree with, disagree with? Do you find his explanations of what devolved yesterday against the Jets to be valid? We'll talk about it coming up next.
Titans head coach Mike Vrabel and voice of the Titans, Mike Keith, take your questions about yesterday's game on the Mike Vrabel Show. Tonight at 6 on 104.5 The Zone.
Vrabel's explanations for what went wrong against the Jets on Sunday. You know, I think that there is, you know, you have to have some nuance to this stuff, right? You have to look at this and say, well, if Mike Vrabel is unwilling, and he should be unwilling, to say that his players weren't good enough to win the game yesterday, the players that he had to play because of injury, that's the head coach's prerogative. You don't want to point fingers like that? That's fine. That's what people like us are for. Professional second guessers, as we have been described. But it boils down to that and the lack of execution by the players who were on the field. You heard my buddy Luke Worsham at A-to-Z Sports talk to him about Ryan Tannehill's pocket presence. Does he need to be able to navigate the pocket better? And Mike Vrabel's response was, yeah, but if he slides one way, we have to make sure that there's a sound pocket around him so that he doesn't slide into another dude, which is exactly what was happening yesterday, and explains the quarterback's inability to be functional. I mean, he was functional. In fact, he was better than functional. He was as good as he could have possibly been, given the drops and the issues and the penalties and the backups that he was out there with. Ryan Tannehill's not going to take those guys out publicly. Mike Vrabel's not going to take out those guys publicly. It's you heard the clip from Mike earlier. Those are excuses, and nobody's going to be interested in our excuses, even though some of them may have validity. And he's right. You as a Titans fan, you don't give a damn about the excuses that Mike Vrabel has or does not have at his disposal. You just care that they lost the game to a winless team. And that's all that matters at the end of the day. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in if you would like to get involved. 615-737-1045. As we kind of wrap up and put a bow on this, and we'll talk about the Jets and the health of the football team. What he said there was that Darrington Evans, they're hopeful that he can return to practice on Wednesday. That would be a good indication that they are going to make him eligible to practice, but not necessarily activate him off IR, something to keep in mind. You have a situation with the Tennessee Titans, defensive backs, where he's talking about Elijah Molden and how that may be matchup dependent based on who they play on a week-to-week basis, which is why Elijah Molden was not the option for them in the slot yesterday. Now, this comes back to their decision-making with their personnel, first and foremost, i.e. John Robinson in the front office, and how that translates into what the coaches feel gives them the best advantage out there against whomever the opponent would be it Jacksonville, Buffalo, Kansas City, in a couple of weeks back in Nashville. But it is, again, problematic that you can't find ways to get these guys snaps, or you can't find ways to get these guys in a position where they can contribute to your football team. So, and then there was the response about there's only one quarter of overtime. The Titans, of course, went to overtime. So why play for a tie? And David Beauclair of Sports Illustrated was asking Mike about what the decision. It was kind of a unique situation, right? Where time's getting ready to expire. You've trying to score, but you don't have the ability to score. So instead of going for it again on a fourth down, well, you run the field goal kicker out there. And the field goal kicker, of course, misses the kick. And Randy Bullock, the snap, I can't tell you that I'm a savant when it comes to the operations of the special teams unit, but everything that we saw and everything that they indicated to us was that the snap and the hold were clean. Randy just kind of hit it in a way that we all saw it. It just kind of died in the air. You saw how quickly it lost forward momentum. And then, of course, it ended up being wide left anyway. So not entirely well struck. But what it comes down to is there's the issues are multifold. It is now their task to correct them in short order because they cannot lose to Jacksonville. And if anybody tries to tell me that they are not capable of losing to Jacksonville, I'm sorry, you're not paying attention to what's happening in the NFL right now. And you sure as hell didn't watch Trevor Lawrence on Thursday night. By the way, Urban Meyer was at the podium earlier today. We'll play you a clip from that press conference. Given that I'm sure Titans fans need a little levity, and that's a Hall of Fame media availability that Urban Meyer just did, even though he has not yet won a game in the NFL. Let's go to Tommy, who's in Lyles, who wants to weigh in on Mike Vrabel and the Titans. What's up, Tommy?
Hey, buddy. In my opinion, it's Coach Vrabel is so hard-headed
that he won't put in a tight end to help block. I mean, we've already been through this several times this year. How can he be so hard-headed? And then last year we had the circus with Bowen, and then he threw him under the bus after the season was over. And guess what? He still sucks.
Hey, thank you for the call, Tommy. Well, I would say like the tight end blocking situation, that's not a Vrabel call, right? I mean, Vrabel can physically walk over, and I would have to go back and look at the snaps in more detail to see how often they did or did not have extra guys in protection, how often they were running 2-man routes as opposed to 3 or 4-man routes. So I don't want to misinform you in that way, but your scrutiny on the personnel that are being put out on the field on offense, well, that's a Todd Downing situation. Now, as to Bowen, this is the year, right? Shane Bowen has not done a great job. They have found pass rush. Their personnel is better. They were not able to affect the quarterback with regularity as they were against the Colts and the Seahawks in weeks 2 and weeks 3. But Harold Landry is playing as good as he ever has. You are without Bud Dupree, which certainly factors in. There are coverage busts with regularity, explosive plays, or as Mike Vrabel talked about them, X plays, where you're talking about 9 plays through 4 games that have gone for 30-plus yards. It's unacceptable. I am not going to be the person who sits up here and defends Mike Vrabel's and Shane Bowen on that defense today. I don't think everything with the defense is all bad, but I know that the secondary hasn't been playing well, and that the secondary, whether it's just as simple as communication, the guys can't figure it out, or whether the defense is too complicated, which again, I reported last year, right? That there were regular complaints from players on that roster, not publicly, but that's why the situation devolves the way that it does. Regular complaints from players on that roster last year that said, yeah, there's too much. We have checks for too many things. They're being asked to process things too much, basically, in real time. Now, whether you think that's a player's issue, as they clearly did, because they turned over a ton of personnel that way, or whether you think that's on the coaching staff for not paring down, or if you think it needs to be somewhere in the middle, which is entirely possible. Both things can be so. You will not be able to truly evaluate. Well, I mean, you will if it continues to spiral like this. What you can say about the Titans is that they give up if they give up chunk plays. Sometimes they can survive it, like Seattle. Sometimes they can't, like right here in New York. 615-737-1045. Rob is in Nashville and wants to weigh in on Mike Vrabel. What's up, Rob?
Hey, I'm just say this. I can't blame it all on Vrabel.
No.
Yes, it was the line, and I'm just looking at Tannehill. Tannehill would run the ball a little bit when the line would break down. I'm trying to figure out. I mean, you look at what was going on, like in the Patriots and Tampa Bay game. You saw Tom Brady. The line was breaking down. Even Tom Brady got out to the side a little bit and tried to scramble and kind of, open up some plays. But, I mean, Tannehill can not sit back there as long as he sat back there yesterday and expect not to be sacked. That's all I got. Thanks, guys.
Hey, thanks for the call. I mean, we went over this a little bit. Let me give you some stats from Next Gen, okay? So time to throw basically is a good way to evaluate how quickly or how efficiently the quarterback is getting rid of the ball. Now, our buddy Zach Lyons from Football and Other F Words put together the numbers, and I assume they're from Next Gen Stats, even though he's not citing Next Gen Stats because Next Gen is the one who tracks time to throw. Ryan Tannehill got rid of the football yesterday, the 6th fastest of any quarterback in football yesterday. Of 32, Ryan Tannehill was 6th in time to throw. Ben Roethlisberger, who has been objectively terrible, 2.05 seconds. Mac Jones, 2.3 seconds. Dak Prescott, 2.3 seconds. Matt Ryan, 2.39 seconds. Teddy Bridgewater, 2.4 seconds. Ryan Tannehill, 2.5 seconds. Average time to throw of 2.45. He can't move back there because they are so quickly swallowing him up. It's not just that the offensive line is breaking down. It's that they're barely stopping it. It's not just that the wide receiver situation is injuries, but it's the fact that they can't separate with any kind of quickness. And in the time that the quarterback is trying to get rid of it, then that is where things are devolving. It's not like Ryan Tannehill's outright holding the ball for damn near 3 seconds. He's not even holding it for 2.5. He's well under average as far as time to throw is concerned. And it's a problem because the offensive line, the wide receivers, and everything else is failing around him. And that is something that's blown up in their face, and it's getting the quarterback killed back there. Zach Lyons, thank you for listening. Zach has just texted me and says it's PFF that he used. I always forget that Next Gen Stats exists. So he did cite Pro Football Focus as opposed to Next Gen Stats. I have not seen that on Pro Football Focus. I always go to Next Gen for it, but I appreciate Zach correcting that for us. Pro Football Focus, courtesy of Zach Lyons at FWordsPod on Twitter. 615-737-1045 is how you weigh in the final moments of the show before we do the polls and we make fun of Urban Meyer together, which we will all enjoy. Chuck from Clarksville, probably going to be the last caller of the day. What's up, Chuck?
Hey, Buck. The only thing I can see is we have 6 starters out yesterday. At certain times of the game, we had, Dupree and Monty Hooker on defense. We've had, both our top wide receivers. Ryan Tannehill was thrown to the 3, 4, 5, and 6 receivers on our team. I mean, that's just not going to get you very many places. The only complaint I've got, and it's an institutional complaint with the whole coaching staff, is I don't understand how over 2 seasons we go into the game and it seems like our game plan doesn't get where it's supposed to be till halftime. So, I mean, that's that, and just, I don't understand why on 3rd down we don't have more plays where we just go out 6 yards and turn around on 3rd and 5 and get the 1st down and move the chain.
It's a legitimate concern. Thanks for the call, Chuck. Here's what I'll say to you. You're spot on. Now, it doesn't help that your red zone execution went up against the best red zone defense in football, but they're getting beat in the first half of games, or they're finding ways to beat themselves. Now they find these ridiculous ways to rally. They find these ridiculous ways to rally in the second half. And that's why these games get so dramatic, so close. 2 out of 4 games have been played in overtime. Because to their credit, they just don't die. But it's that if you want to find an accusation to lob against this coaching staff, it's that they are not finding ways to get themselves in positions to succeed early. Now, the offense was moving the ball with regularity down the field, and then 3 times they stalled out. You could have come away with 21 points. You came away with 9. That's damning. That's as bad as it gets. So they're finding ways to move the ball, but then when they get into the red zone, where they've traditionally thrived, they've not been able to get it done. They are hurting themselves in that regard, and it's costing them opportunities. 615-737-1045. Lucas says he wants one more call because he hadn't had enough work on the phones today. So let's go to Zach in Columbia, who's been waiting patiently. Hello, Zach.
Yeah, I'd like to say, in my opinion, that it wasn't all, of course, it wasn't all Mike Vrabel's fault out of the game yesterday, but something that, I guess kind of irritates me is when, you got these receivers that, they pay a lot of money for, and, well, they're not playing, but I kind of feel like that me as a fan, the fan base should at least have how they don't say the injury, that the injury is pretty much.
All right. Lucas says he's done. So, no, I don't know if it was a phone line or if it was just a lack of train of thought or what happened there, Zach, but I appreciate you trying there, buddy. With the wide receivers, I think he's saying he's frustrated because he's got these wide receivers, or the Titans have these wide receivers, and they're not playing out there. And he's asking for injury reports or more detailed injury reports, and Mike Vrabel just doesn't give a damn about that. That doesn't help him win a football game. He's not going to give it to us. Not going to give it to you. He doesn't care how you feel about it. That's just them's the breaks. And that more than anything is what the head coach is going to go down swinging on. So why don't we find a way to positively uplift? Let's make everybody laugh. Coming up next with a bit of Urban Meyer's press conference out of it after a scandal in Ohio, which is so rare that scandals happen in Ohio, and polls next.
The Raiders and Chargers play 4 quarters on Monday Night Football. Coverage starts at 7 on your home for Sunday, Monday, and Thursday Night Football. 104.
happy to get home. Certainly a fun trip to New York, maybe not for Titans fans and the result that was, but certainly for the purposes of just seeing the Big Apple. It's always good to come to New York. But let's take some time. Lucas, do we have his press conference? Do we have Urban Meyer's press conference standing at the ready? So Urban Meyer, now this was thought to be an old video, but Urban Meyer was photographed, videotaped in the world of social media. I guess Urb's new to that, just as he's new to all of the things that it takes to be an NFL head coach. He gets photographed at a night out in a bar somewhere in Ohio, hanging out with some women, having some women dance on him, and apparently according to the retweet that I just put out there, groping rather aggressively, the rare oil check from an NFL head coach at a bar on over the weekend somewhere in Ohio after the Jags lost to the Bengals on Thursday night. So Urban Meyer, the media's been waiting. Now is the time. And so Urban Meyer spoke to the media about his transgressions apparently this weekend.
Yeah, I just apologize to the team and staff and for being a distraction, just stupid. And so I explained everything that happened and owned it, and just stupid. Should not have myself in that kind of position.
Urban, did you fly back with the team, or did you stay in?
No, I stayed to see the grandkids, and we all went to dinner that night at the restaurant, and then there's a big group next to our restaurant, and they wanted me to come over and take pictures, and I did. And they were trying to pull me out on the dance floor, screwing around, and I should have left.
How did the team react? I mean, they're probably pretty reactionary, or how did they take it? Your apology?
Well, I've always been so defensive of them. I remember when Trevor told me he was going to go to Vegas for his bachelor party. I mean, I was just, my gosh, man, be careful and surround yourself, and because I've seen this happen, and I just. So the team. I spoke to a bunch of leaders one-on-one. Spoke to all the players. They're good. They were focused on Tennessee, and I apologized again for being a distraction. And a coach should not be a distraction.
How about your family? Did you feel a need to apologize to your family?
Yeah, of course I did. Yeah, that's not me, and that's oh yeah, they were upset.
Have you talked to Shad Khan about it, and what was that conversation like?
I did talk to Shad, and very supportive, and Trent, I talked to him obviously at length. Right when I got that phone call that night, the next night. This is after
Urban Meyer speaking to the media in Jacksonville. So Lebowski writes, "Did you just drop an oil check on the air?" Hell yeah, I did. Polls.
I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. Because the polls have closed and the votes have been tallied, it's time for a poll update. And he's a good boy. Buck Reising Show producer and correspondent, Lucas Panzica.
When I say poll update, I'm not talking about Urban Meyer. Go ahead, buddy.
Which Titans loss felt worse, Bengals 2020 or Jets 2021? 82% say it was Jets.
That's spot on. That one hurts.
What's one thing you would ask Mike Vrabel today? Okay, there were about 167 responses to this, and I don't even know which ones to go to. Sunday's Plate says, why does it look like in-game adjustments are not being made by the coordinators?
Listen, I think the best thing that they do is the in-game adjustments, because that allows them to rally in the second half. But the early mistakes are the problem. The early mistakes are what allow you not to bury a team like the Jets.
Will says, why have the Titans looked not emotionally ready to play 2 out of 4 games this year? Preston says, can we help Todd Downing pack any boxes and help escort him out of the building? Hayden says, why are we still playing so much off coverage? Well, Luke asked that question. Luke Worsham did. Maybe we'll run that back tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm certain we're going to spend a lot more time talking about that and why, the 2 rookie corners can't get on the field for one reason or another.
Where's Urban Meyer losing more, on the field or off the field? 62% say off the field. Puka says in his heart.
Hey, listen to me. You know what? What's as telling as anything about Urban Meyer? And I don't know Urban. I've never worked with him. I've never talked to him, never covered him. But everything you need to know about Urban Meyer is that he starts that apology off not apologizing to his wife or his family, but apologizing to the organization and the team. And how pissed are you if you're Trevor Lawrence and Urban Meyer in his apology press conference is bringing up, oh, I warned him, when he made his bachelor trip to Vegas, that this kind of stuff happens, and now I'm the one doing it. So somewhere Sunshine is throwing his hands up in the air, being like, Coach, what the hell?
What positions were the Titans more talented at than the Jets? Puka says running back and quarterback. Caleb Gray says Henry and Tannehill. Brad says running back. B-Ran says running back. Coach Solon says Mike Keith and Coach Mack.
Quarterback, running back, and I'd take Harold Lander, but I don't know. That Jets pass rush was pretty nasty yesterday. They don't have the horses. They don't have the horses to keep up right now. That's going to be a problem because you've got a divisional game on the horizon against yet another winless team. We will not take any more L's today, but we will continue the conversation tomorrow. Lane and Mickey got you covered the rest of the way in 3HL. Lane and Mickey, though, they're up next.
Coming up today on Blaine and Mickey.
The Titans are back from New York, the Vols are back from Missouri, and we're back from, well, who knows where. We're back to break it all down.
And we've got ding-dongs.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have a ding-dong? Or dongs? Oops, my bad. Let us know. The ding-dong of the week is coming your way.
Today, starting at 1 p.m. on 104.5 The Zone.